Hello and welcome to the EMBN Show from the precipitous cliffs high above Monaco in what has been a super exciting week in the world of e-bikes. Wow, what a stunning, if not scary, location to be. Now, Monaco isn't just known for screaming F1 cars. Just over the back here is where World Cup downhill racing began 30 years ago, almost to the day, where local legend Nico Vulio's took that first World Cup win. Now, in just over a month's time, the UCI e-Enduro World Cup begins about 2 hours east of here on the shores of Pietraligure. If you guys haven't already got an entry, get your entry in. It's a stunning place to go and race mountain bikes on some fantastic trails. Now, one team that will be new to e-bike World Cup racing next year will be the SRAM GASGAS team. Now, for many of you who've been tuned in to the events of CIOTA over in Monterey, California over the past week, many of you might have seen the new prototype GASGAS eMTB. 170mm front and rear. It looks to me that it's 29-inch wheels front and rear, or 29, 27.5. Now, the details are pretty thin on the ground at this moment. We've not had much from GASGAS, but it seems to me that it's got some big hitting suspension on it. Now, it doesn't take much imagination or speculation if you've looked around some of the websites that many people are saying, or at least they're thinking, that the suspension on that bike will in fact be WP. Now, for those of you guys who are familiar with motocross and enduro, WP is a massively successful shock absorber, damper, call it what you will, suspension company. Now, they've had their suspension on KTM bikes. Remember, KTM is part of KTM, Husqvarna, GASGAS motorcycles, different for e-mountain bikes. So it seems to me that sometime in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if WP features in that SRAM bike. Now, talking of SRAM, we've speculated on the EMBN for the past year. What about the new SRAM motor? This could be the new SRAM motor in this GASGAS bike. If it is, there's lots of things to think about. I mean, such things as, will there be an automatic function on it, similar to, say, the eMTB mode on the Bosch bikes, or maybe the automatic mode on the Giant Signdrive Pro motor? Because it's going to be a race bike, I would imagine there'll be something special involved in that motor. Like I said, we're not saying it's a SRAM motor, but I'm sure there's a good chance that it will be. When you look at some of the shifting that's in the pictures, you can see that it's very heavily SRAM. Also, you've got the SRAM T-type derailleur and cassette on the bike, so there's a good chance that electronic shifting will be wired into the battery on the bike. We don't actually know what capacity battery's on it, but I think overall, the visual of this bike is quite striking, and I think there's one thing that GASGAS have said is that this will actually be a defining moment for GASGAS's involvement in the mountain bike industry. So I think super exciting times. Hopefully we'll get to tell you guys a little bit more about the new bike, the new motor, and the new suspension on that bike in the weeks ahead. Like I said, they're going to debut this bike, the racers. There's two very strong teams. They're going to debut this bike on the slopes of Pietraligure in just over a month's time. Now, other news from Salzburg, which is where GASGAS and Husqvarna are based, is there's a new hard cross bike. 170mm travel with some fantastic geometry. That's a big hitting bike. We've had the hard cross on the channel many times, but this is an all new geometry, all new feel to the bike. There's two battery capacities on it. You've either got a 720 or a 630 watt-hour battery. There's 5 different models starting at, I think, just over 5,000 euros. So good affordability, good range, good motor. The Shimano EP8 motor on there. Some of the numbers: 63.5 head tube angle, 77 degrees seat tube angle. So it's a bike that can do pretty much everything. Possibly a great bike for a place such as this. Now, in other news, yes, there's some highly strung people on the cliffs above Cap d'Isle in the background here. Yes, lots of speculation in the past week, given that CIOTA took place. And one big piece of news is It seems to me that Bafang are very much on the move, and we expect to see some new e-bike motors in the next few months. One new motor which Bafang have already launched is the M560. Now this is more a cargo e-bike motor, but get this, 140 Newton meters of torque. So quite interesting to ride a bike with that much power, that's for sure. 3.3 kilos, obviously it's not there for the light to full power e-mountain bikes just yet, but nevertheless pretty punchy. Elsewhere, Shimano Pro have got some new e-bike specific saddles. Now obviously with the e-mountain biking you spend lots of time sat down, and the way you deliver the power, the way you move your butt when you're trying to get grip on those super tech climbs is really important. So the flex and the size and shape of that e-bike saddle is very critical. So a few different models, carbon, stainless steel component parts, starting at just over €100. Time now, folks, for some more wax hacks by the former World Downhill Masters champion, Johnny Whack Walker. This time, he's got a hack about keeping your tyre valves up to scratch.
Most of you'll know you've had a puncture out on the trail, or your tyre's gone down out on the trail, and if you're using tubeless, then you'll pump your tyre up.
We're straight in. We're straight in.
Yeah,
Christ,
straight in. Yeah. And if you're out on the trail and you try to pump your tyre up with your normal little pump, it won't go in. If you've had your sealant in for a while, what can happen is your valve will be blocked up. So what I do when I'm out on the trail, just take the valve out, lose the air that you've got in the tyre, obviously, and what'll have happened all round the valve here, it'll have gunged up with the sealant.
And what will all sealant gunge up the valve?
Some worse than others.
Really? Okay,
yes,
right.
Some worse than others.
Yeah.
Some go to like a really gluey plastic, depending how long you've had the sealant in the tyre. I mean, obviously they do tell you to change the sealant every 6 months. Yeah. And we forget. Or while ever the wheel's going round, we don't change it.
I will be honest with you, John. Petey only recently introduced me to tubeless tyres, so this is new territory for me. This is actually probably information for my future maintenance. Yes,
yeah, because once you leave it in, because you will leave it in,
right?
Because you don't do the maintenance, you know. If you ever can't get the air in, you have to take your valve out and you have to unscrew it as far as you can and get all the gunge and the glue from the valve. Yeah. If it still isn't free, you can hold it with the...
That's a nice touch.
With that, then you can get a pair of pliers or something that you've got with you, and you screw the whole of the end off.
Right.
And then the thing will pull out. But once you've done that,
so what you're saying,
you need to change the valve after, because it will screw off. But you will be able to get your valve in, and it will pump air in clear through the valve.
So hack number one is make sure that your valve is clean.
Is clean.
Right.
Even down to doing it once a month in your garage, where you've got your track pump, take your valve out, just clean the gunge from behind your valve.
Time now from one cool place to the cool places that you guys have been riding in the past week. This one's from Marcus, who's in Piombino, which is in the Tuscany region. A nice bit of coastline there. I think this is Piombino. I think that's down by Punta Ala, if I'm correct. Is that right? Marcus there with his Specialized. Moving on to a more mountainous region. This again is in Italy. This time in the Italy-Slovenia region, Monte Mattugere. This is Gerhard, and some fantastic mountain background there. There's still actually, just so you guys know, there is snow on the hills here north of Monaco, except that we're going to be probably avoiding it. Next up, we've got some hot action from Dwayne, who's in McDowell Mountain Park in Arizona. Nice bit of cactus there in the background. And finally, something more grassy. This is Danny and Husqvarna Mountacross 5 out in Switzerland who says, I went with a friend to our local mountain with beautiful trails. In the background is the Ridgy Mountain, also called Queen of the Mountains. Now, the great thing with Cool Places, I think it's inspiration for everybody to go and find some great places, some great trails. I mean, you don't just have to have great trails. You can actually bring an e-bike to a place like this. You can go wandering up into the hills here above Monaco. There are some stunning rocks to climb. I wouldn't say that limestone is the best in the west, sorry, best in the wet, but like I said, if you want to get your photographs featured, your videos featured on Cool Places, there's a link in this video which shows you how to upload the pictures. Like I said, it's a great place to inspire everybody who's got an e-mountain bike. Okay, time now folks for some questions from you guys. We try our best to answer all the questions you guys submit to our videos. First question is, what happens if I drop my laptop down this cliff? Well, I'm sure the IT will have it all on video. No, seriously, first one's from Motorex and Redas, who asks, I'm wondering what will happen if I use a non-e-bike fork. Now, like he says, Cane Creek fork on my e-bike or other brands that are non-e-bike specific. Now, this is a very difficult question to answer. What I will say is that some brands, I think Specialized, for example, had a non-e-bike specific fork on some of the Levos in the past few years. So I don't actually think you do need to have an e-bike specific fork. Having said that, there is a system weight which you need to check out. I think the system weight depends on your bike, on you yourself, and your body weight. So that is important. But I think, if you think about it, common sense will tell you it depends actually what type of e-bike you've got. So, like for example, a 120mm e-bike with a Fox 34. Or a 180mm bike with a Fox 38 or a RockShox Zeb. Obviously, different e-bikes require different needs, different riders. So I think it's more about common sense than anything with an e-bike specific label. Next up is a question which Givery Sham Smith asked is, hi Steve, good comparison video on, and this is the e-mountain bike full power versus mountain bike versus mid power versus full power e-mountain bikes. Is it Turbo Max Assist on both e-bikes? Yes, it was. And the second question comes from AQ and Simon Tipple, who asked, what was the heart rate percentage for the full fat e-bike? Now, that was actually really interesting because in as much as lots of people think that you ride a mountain bike, you can have a higher heart rate. Well, the actually average heart rate for the full power Husqvarna bike on that climb, the climb that my colleague behind the lens said was the worst day on a mountain bike in his life, was actually 7 beats per minute higher than it was on the mountain bike. So really not that much in it. I think the important thing to consider here is when you do laps on an e-mountain bike, your downhill heart rate will be super high anyway. So if you're going to be doing, say, 6 ups and downs on an e-mountain bike compared to maybe 2 on a mountain bike, your cumulative heart rate will actually be higher. So even though one run was 7 beats per minute higher on the mountain bike, I think that'll come down far closer when you do multiple laps. So folks, thanks for sending your questions in. Please keep them coming. Like I said, we'll try our best to answer them. But time now for our weekly question to you guys. And thanks so much for the comments which you guys have submitted in the past few weeks. This week's question is, what do you think the biggest innovation in the eMTB has been in the past 5 years? Let us know in the comments down below. Okay guys, bike vault time. Kicking things off is Martin, Cube Stereo 140 HPC Pro out in Oslo Airport. I've got to say, that is a super nice station and a super nice bike. Next up, again from McDowell Mountain Park, which we saw earlier on the show. Again, this is Dwayne, and this is a Casa and Flow Adaptive Sports Camp. Now, obviously there's lots of bikes going on here. I'd like to have Martin with me to give this a nice or super nice, because I don't actually know some of the technical details, but I'm guessing by the vibe of this, it's a super nice. Next up, this has got to be West Wales. No, it's actually Anglesey in Wales. I thought this was actually Pembrokeshire. No, this is Mark Specialized Turbo Levo. I mean, it's got to be super nice in Wales, right? It does look wild and wet as you get in the west part of Wales. This is Anglesey, it's a beautiful part. Got to be super nice. And next up, I reckon this is, yes, I was going to say Malverns. This is Marcus and Specialized S-Works in the West Midlands. I think that's a nice shot. And finally, look at this puppy. This is Mia. Is this Mia the dog? Mia who's submitting the shot. No human mates to ride with today, so I took Mia the machine out with me. And this is a Scott E Ransom 910. I mean, what a beautiful puppy. A dog, not a puppy. Super nice. So that's it for the bike vault this week, folks. Keep those shots, keep those fantastic bikes coming. Always great to see the bikes that you guys ride, and it seems there's new bikes out every week in the e-mountain bike world. And a few final thoughts for this week's EMBN show. Obviously, we've been keeping a close eye on the social side of things. The first one we saw is Nicky Wells, South Wales-based Nicky Wells, with a new e-mountain bike saddle from WTB. Now, we'll hopefully get our hands on the WTB saddle in the weeks ahead. What's distinctive about it, it's got a big hole in there where you can stick your face in or actually use it to lift your e-bike over obstacles, such as places such as this. Elsewhere, we saw some new bash guards from 90 Down, obviously a bash guard. I wouldn't go recommending you bash your e-bike motor into rocks or stumps, but nevertheless, for flying debris, I think this unit here from 90 Down is a very cool bit of kit. And finally, Husqvarna, as I mentioned, have been showing off the capability of their new hard cross bike up in the mountains. That's it from the cliffs of Monaco. We're now heading east to Finale Ligure to some, well, interesting things which are going on in the e-mountain bike world, which we will bring you in the weeks ahead. We're also then going to Riva del Garda to the e-bike festival for lots of new kit, which we'll show you on the weekend on EMBN. Thanks for joining us.